I am Kurt Orderson. I was born in Mitchell's Plain, a dusty and windswept ghetto just outside of Cape Town. I have always wondered where my ancestors come from, and more importantly, the roots of my family name, Orderson. Join me on my journey. This is Nandi Beach. Under Apartheid rule, it was the only seaside designated for blacks. Situated on the southeast coast of the Cape Peninsula, it is right next to Strandfontein Beach, which was actually set aside for so-called colored people. For me, this label has always been an issue. My mom, Joan, like thousands of other mothers on the Cape Flats, works in a clothing factory. She has taught me the essence of life and the importance of family. And then there's my dad, Winston, who taught me how to be a man. I have been blessed with 4 beautiful sisters: Deirdre, Crystal, Sam, and Helen. I grew up in a society where many people around me denied their African roots. Perhaps because of apartheid. When my African consciousness started, things became clearer. Through the inspiration of Rastafari, I realized that I am an African, and I recognize Africa's contribution to civilization.
Today is the 13th of the 6th month, 2003. I'm here with my family. I haven't seen them for quite a while. So tonight I feel like bonding with them again. Tonight I feel like feeling them again. Tonight we're celebrating my grandfather's 90th birthday.
This is the man we affectionately call Dera. At 90, he's still a feisty old man, and in love with Carol, a woman half his age. He is the axis of my family. We are because of him. Mitchell's Plain, situated approximately 20 kilometers from the heart of Cape Town, built in the 1970s by the architects of apartheid. It's on this bleak flatland called the Cape Flats, where people of color were moved to in the 1970s, as far away from the city as possible. With a population close to 1 million, unemployment is high, and the community struggles with a range of social problems. Family photos always raised my curiosity about our family roots, the Ordersons. The best way to find some answers to who we are and where we come from was to get the family together.
That's all. We'll be able to see nicely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I decided to get everyone together to find some answers or raise the issue of who we are and where we come from. Everyone got together at the home of Auntie Abby, one of my father's younger sisters.
Talking about the life of my grandfather. I never knew him. I asked my father, who is my grandfather? Then he told me, young is van die skip gaan spring. Have you got a photo of him? I would have liked to see his face. No, that time they didn't have a lot of cameras. Gerrit told me he jumped the ship.
There is a farm.
But his name
He's
is
a
also
West
James.
Indies. Oh, he jumped ship.
James Joseph, that's his name.
All he always used to say was that he was a very strict guy. I mean, my father had no freedom whatsoever. And that's why he said he'll never hit his children or lift his hands for his children because his father was too strict and he used to get a lot of hiding. I suppose because he was naughty as well. I don't know which island he actually came from. Tera, which island did your father come from? Barbados?
Barbados, I believe, something like that, yes. He's also a chap that jumped the boat
But didn't you look in the ark
and brought me in a big world.
Yeah.
Like our dad never told us too much, like. So if he, like you guys went into detail with us.
I always said my grandfather was from West Indies because that's what my father said. So it means he's a black man. And I mean, I can't argue about it. If you look at me, I can't argue about it.
Hendrik Verwoerd passed the Group Areas Act of 1950, which forced different races to live apart. People of color were forced to move from areas declared white. It separated friends and even family.
Some of your friends were saying Cold Street Muslim.
My friends,
they-
white friends, and he go to bioscope, same buy your bioscope, then he go sit downstairs, and I had to go sit upstairs.
Same bodies, like.
Same buddies,
After the bicycle bodies.
eating their Star Sweets and their Wilson blocks. Oh, that was famous sweets.
But certain years, 1 year, everything was just parted, separated. We never knew. Same bodies we grew up like. They just parted. I believe one that play white. If you were light complexion, you could go as white, and the others is just. So we all moved to Bontiver, like we were all put out, like, and the rest stayed there. But we couldn't understand what's happening, like. Afterwards, you hear that I think that was for Wood's time, so. So we just believe, yeah, if you light complexion, you can apply for white, and dark complexion, you just got to go to the townships, like.
Daddy, how I missed you, my daddy. Oh, daddy. Oh, daddy.
I was born in Wau. Let me see. Must be in Mowbray, yes. But my mother was what do you call it? What do you call it? No. My mother was a what? Muslim. She was a Muslim. And her two sisters of mine, we were Muslims. I was given away, you see, to the man that make me born.
Oh, daddy. Oh, how I love you. Oh, daddy. Oh, I miss you. Oh, daddy. Oh, daddy. You're my number one. Thank you.
My dad took me away from that lady, what you call it, that Muslim woman.
Was she not your mother?
She was my mother, this woman. Something went wrong. But he took me and the two sisters away from in Mowbray. And he was on a big skips like a foreman always.
Wasn't it the West Indies?
West Indies came from that side. They escaped, from West India. And that's the way they came to the city. When he came back there, he was on a boat, and they make a foreman of him. Something like that, on a ship. Well, they came a lot, but I know in the 66 those days, but I can't remember all those West Indies. All of them is dead. Oh, he was a real hell of a winter. They want to knock hell into you. Yes. But when he comes along, that's all the chaps say, hey, there he comes, then he must run and sit with a book on the stoop. Yes. He was short and nice and stout, you see, and dark like me, you see. Yes, but he was a hell of a ONGO. Yes.
Yeah, what do you remember?
Yes, then I can remember water piano. Those days was piano. Oh, was just piano, and when how can I go to play, eh? And when I do something, then he tell a fucking other chap teach me, the teacher, was a teacher piano teacher. Then he knocked me over, yeah, now how can your fingers work? The hell of a that, yo. Because he sit there, and the teachers is there, and I got this piano, it's in the house, you see. No, he didn't worry about nobody else, he just knew a chap, some tailor man, yes, not a tailor, hair tailor, yes, and this tailor was some son, not a Santalina, some damn Santalina, something like that. That shop, and I always go to the shop, and they take me to that barber too. I just got to behave myself, that's all. See? All the people know about him. There's a West Indian. They just say it's a West Indian. They know how he talks English, you see.
All sort of started when you hear the stories as a child. Oh, you know, that person came from the sea, he came far away. And you always wonder, now, is it true or they're just making it up? Throughout, possibly not only in Cape Town, but I think all over the world, there's the mythology around your grandparents or your great-grandparents, that they came from somewhere. And sometimes it's the mythology that keeps you going at a time when you need to know where you are from. But then there's a moment where you wonder whether the myth is in fact truth, or will it continue to be a mythology. I left South Africa in 2002 to live in Sri Lanka, and I came back, and I remember I saw an article in the newspaper about this girl who was doing this, and it was my last day back to Sri Lanka, and I called Kurt. I'm like, I saw this article about this research, and she's doing it about this family and descendants of families
West
of
Indian
West Indian, and I was like, can it be true? So it's not a myth actually. So our grandfather wasn't talking nonsense.
We're actually forced to work on very large plantations.
If you think, I mean, race and racism has been part and parcel of Cape Town. Now, my grandfather is a very dark of complexion man, but yet I think there's a very subtle racism about him. And I think it's partly got to do with class and forced removals. And when people have lost everything, you have to ask yourself, is it inherently racism, or is there a class perspective on it? Hence the significance of the story, not only for Cape Town, not only for South Africa, but I think a worldwide phenomenon, because there's people of color all over the world, people with a hybrid identity. And now what does it mean to be hybrid? It's to acknowledge that you have different roots. You know, that's from all over.
True.
And that makes Cape Town a special place.
The researcher Misha Charles from the United States addressed the reunion of Caribbean and African American descendants at the District 6 Museum. As I walked into the museum, I realized that we are not the only people of Caribbean descent. It was a fitting place to have such a gathering. All the people in this room had a connection to District 6, the place they were forcibly removed from 4 decades ago.
For people who I have not met, my name is Misha Charles. I was wondering how many people are actually going to show up, and everyone has showed up, and I'm so happy. Thank you all so much. I think what we're going to do today is I'm going to start out doing a little presentation on my research that I've been doing at UCT. And I've actually been talking to a lot of people, and people have been telling me that they've also brought their own photos and stories about their usually fathers and grandfathers who come from the West Indies. So I'm thinking that my little presentation will sort of be the background, and then everyone else can sort of fill in with the stories that they have of their own. I'm actually looking at African Americans and 1900s, or the late 1800s and early 1900s, and looking at how they came together in Cape Town and became one community. The slave trade was a part of what historians call the triangle trade. So what happened is, the Europeans would come up in Europe, and they'd have manufactured goods, beads, clothing, what have you. They'd come down and they'd sell those here in their colonies in Western Africa. They're actually laying down on their backs in the slave ship, and they're just they're laying next to each other, and that's how they sat for the entire journey across the Atlantic. They couldn't move to use the bathroom or the toilet. They couldn't move to eat. They didn't move to stretch. They were shackled, their wrists and their ankles. And the interesting thing about that is that most of them didn't survive. And the reason why so many were taken is because usually around 30 years old, they just died. And so they kept replenishing their slave population. Okay? Then you have some going to the U.S. up here, not as many as in the Caribbean. The slaves in the U.S., they reproduced themselves more, and they were also bred by the slave owners. So they had a more stable population in the U.S., so they didn't have to transport as many over there. Most of the slaves in the Americas, that's the U.S. and the Caribbean, were actually forced to work on very large plantations, cotton plantations, sugar plantations, tobacco plantations.
Good afternoon. I'm the granddaughter of Arthur Arturo Emil Watlington. I was about 7 to 9 when he died, so I don't have much recollection of that, but what I was told by my parents and that. Then I visited, he was born in St. Thomas Islands, and I visited St. Thomas Islands 4 years ago, where we tried to complete the family tree.
I'm a grandson of this gentleman. He's one of those that jumped ship here, and he was a dock worker, a caulker on the boat.
I'm the baby daughter of Amos Absalom that was on the photo. And he was born in Jamaica. And I had the privilege of going to Jamaica to go and see, and I have a photo of him where he was born. But the family died, and I managed to meet his brothers that was alive, 2 brothers. I stayed with the one. And they related everything to me regarding what took place in the West Indies and how my father got to land here. But the family in Jamaica, they never knew me, I never knew them. I just took a chance and went over there and went to school and got to know all of them. So I'm very proud to be able to stand here and represent my father and the rest of the family in the West Indies.
But what we must not forget, this coming together makes us realize that from Africa, they went over to the Caribbean, to the United States of America, but they came back to Africa. And I suppose they would be able to say, as the poet says, breathe there, man whose soul so dead who never to himself has said, this is my land, my native land.
The apartheid government, with their bulldozers, started to flatten District 6 in the 1960s. They used force to remove all 60,000 residents after declaring it a whites-only area. This poor but vibrant community was crushed and scattered all over the plains of the Cape Flats, several kilometers away, far from work and their friends.
Here, born and raised under the mountain, Table Mountain, and where our house was here. You know, here's the mosque here, the mosque was here, and we looked up the street, we looked into the mosque because it's a double-story building, and it faced the mountain. So every morning when we wake up, we look at Table Mountain. That was, you know, we had everything that we wanted. Here, when we grew up, you know. And then this was the first building that they demolished in District 6.
At that time, you know, children couldn't, parents they are different to what they are at that time, you see. So when I really wanted to get to know my father, the old chap died, you see.
they were taken, asked to come because there was a shortages of builders, separates.
From here in Cape Town?
Yeah, in Cape Town, yes, yeah. And Mispelon actually went over there, and solicited them from the West Indies to come, and work here, in the docks. When I was over there on the island in Barbados, I spoke to one of the cabinet ministers, that I had an interview with. And I related the story to him, and I also took that photo with me.
Okay.
And they were surprised to discover that there were so many West Indians that settled here in Cape Town. They were unaware of that. And then he told me it could be that some of them were enlisted into the British Army.
Okay.
Many of us, to set our identities where our parents were concerned, especially our fathers. You understand? And I think there is where things, didn't blossom out. That is why you have to look for your identity. It's only now that we're coming to look for our true identity and who we really are. And now that most of us have found our identity and we're proud of ourselves, I think from there on, we can only go forward, man. So, thank you.
This goes worldwide, all over the globe. Ricky, wicked. Anyway. Ooh, oh gosh, oh gosh, ooh yeah, oh gosh. To be Rasta is a serious thing. Now for them I take it for a joke. Now. To be Rasta is a serious thing. We no deal with no pork and no coke. Now.
At the Cape Archives, where registers of early Cape Town are kept, I pick up the trail. I was just looking for some documents, anything that says Joseph Orderson was a real person.
No pork, no coke, yo. A Rasta man promote love, yo. A Rasta man promote unity. Rasta man promote peace, yeah. Yo, equal rights and justice. Yo, them no say Rasta man a humble man. Oh, them Rasta man a never trouble one. Yo, Rasta man a naya biggie man. Yo, we bout it.
And then I found it, a death certificate stating his place of birth as Barbados, West Indies.
Yo, to be Rasta is a serious thing. Yo, the whole of them a come with them pork and them coke. To be Rasta is a serious thing. Now for them I take me for a joke. Now, to be Rasta is a serious thing. We no deal with no pork and no coke. Now. Unity is strength, yeah. And unity is peace, yeah. And unity is love, yeah. That's all Rasta man I promote now.
The world is indebted to us for the benefits of civilization. They stole our arts and sciences from Africa. Then why should we be ashamed of ourselves? Why should we be discouraged if somebody laughs at us today? Who's to tell what tomorrow will bring forth? Did they not laugh at Christ, Moses, Muhammad? Was there not a Carthage, Greece, and Rome? So we see and have changes every day. So pray, work, be steadfast, and be not dismayed. Because as the Jew is held together by his religion, the white race is by the assumption and the unwritten law of superiority, the Mongolian by the precious tie of blood, likewise the black man must unite in one grand racial hierarchy. Our union must know no clime, no nationality, but let us all hold together in every country and every clime, making a racial empire upon which the sun shall never set. Let no voice but your own speak to you from the depths. Let no influence but your own rouse you in time of peace and time of war. Here are. Let no one inoculate you with evil doctrines to suit his own convenience. Charity begins at home. So first to thyself be true, and thou canst not then be false to no man. Because God and nature first made us what we are. And out of our own creative genius we make ourselves what we want to be. Follow always that great law. But in your homes and everywhere possible, you must teach the higher development of science to your children. And race the scientists par excellence. For in religion and science lies our only hope to withstand the evil designs of modern materialism. Never forget your God. We live, work, and pray for a binding racial hierarchy, whose only natural, spiritual, and political limits shall be God and Africa at home and abroad. With God's dearest blessings, I leave you for a while. One love.
I knew that I had to get to Barbados, but I didn't have enough money for the trip. I was fortunate enough to get a job in the US. I saw this as a one-stop on my journey to Barbados. It became an enriching experience which made me more determined to reach Barbados. In Baltimore, I found a job teaching young people at a youth summer camp. It gave me an opportunity to break some of their stereotypes of people living in Africa. And I could experience the life of Africans living in the diaspora. At a powwow celebrated by Native Americans in Baltimore, the beating of the drums reminded me that all indigenous people are connected in one spirit. I felt an instant connection. Perhaps it's because of my Khoisan ancestry. I met this brother, Jahidi, on the streets of Baltimore. Talking to him, I realized that their social problems are so similar to ours back home.
Baltimore is famous because it was a port where a lot of slaves came in, you know what I mean? The harbor was important, and it was important to distribute stuff throughout America, Annapolis as well, you know? A lot of slaves came in through these ports and was put throughout America, so that legacy is with them, you know? Harriet Tubman. There's places you could go in Baltimore where the actual Underground Railroad is still here. And so it's a poor place, you know what I mean? And right now, the addiction, the drugs is what keep people just stuck. That's all you need, If you can get your city destroyed or get the drugs into the thing, you're gonna have drug problems, reproduction problems, health problems, you know what I mean, job problems, social problems, you know what I mean? Like, I just wish that people would just be real with us, because the reality is the economy at no point has it been enough to sustain all the people. When slavery was over, there wasn't enough jobs for those people to work.
I understand the points of Garvey's unity, self-preservation, and nation building. But first, how do we address the psychological aspect of our people? How do we awaken our people from the psychological death that we are now finding ourselves in?
The only way you can subjugate a people is then if you subjugate their minds. And that has been done very skillfully in terms of misinformation and downright lies and the changing of history. And the Universal Negro Improvement Association means the unity of African people all over the world. And again, if you read Marcus Garvey, you'll see what he said, for example, about capitalism. You know, he said there's nothing, quote, wrong with capital, okay? Because we're no longer in an agricultural society. So capital is the coin of the realm, but it's how you use capital. He said, and the way that capital should be used, it can be used by individuals, it can be used by corporations, it can be used by cooperatives, and it can be used by government. But government must ensure that people are not taken advantage of in terms of the use of capital.
Greetings in the mighty name of the Trinity, Emperor Haile Selassie I.
Greetings in the name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I at the best minute. I'm Warrior King from Jamaica and African too, you know what I mean? Yeah, this is big up all the African people, South Africa, Gambia, Nigeria, Ethiopia, you know, all the African people, because we all are one, you know? Give thanks and praise.
The music that they sing is for the African. We got in the tunes, I said real content. Well, the King of Kings is omnipotent. The music is all I run, no by your fence now. It's a version, will keep you skanking all day long. It's inspiring, anybody will keep you strong.
At the end of the summer camp, it was time to say goodbye. I also had enough money to continue my journey. On my way, I stopped over in St. Vincent, a small island close to Barbados. A good friend, Sister Fanny, took me around, giving me insight into the history of the island.
St. Vincent's got a strong spirit, the people. The people have got an energy that is really like African people. When I think of St. Vincent, I think of the mountains and the topography and the nature and the relationship of us with our environment and our nature. The first people were the Siboneyes, which are an indigenous Amerindian tribe that came up from South America through the string of Caribbean islands, and they passed through St. Vincent. And then we had the Arawaks after that, and they were pushed out by the Caribs, which were a more warfaring Amerindian tribe. There is some historical documentation that says that the islands were occupied by Africans in the 13th century, and they sailed in 1300 across the Atlantic.
We got the idea.
There was a prince from Mali. So it goes, the research that's been done by this guy called Ivan von Sertima in a book called They Came Before Columbus. They never came back to Mali, and about 2 years later he himself, with another fleet of ships, set off sail, and they found themselves in the Grenadines. In the Grenadine Islands, and we found artifacts from that period of history, Malian artifacts in the Grenadines. Although the British colonizers wrote history in such a way as to say, well, they discovered the islands of the Caribbean, the West Indies, there were in fact black people here before them, and that they met black people here. And they were the Garifuna who, together with the Caribs, fought the British and French for 200 years. Wow. And this is why in St. Vincent, the colonization process never really took a deep hold. And the terrain was much more difficult because of the mountains. The Garifuna people were able to hide and fight and outmaneuver the British and the French over that period of time. It's fascinating. And what happened to the Garifuna in the end, though, was that they were exiled. The Carib chief Chatoyer, who is our national hero, was shot in an unfair duel with a British admiral, and they rounded up his people and put them on a on 2 islands that are off the coast here and left them there, and then eventually put them onto a rudderless boat and let them drift.
I know Jah will show us the way, because we are kneel and pray.
I did not make any formal arrangements for accommodation or set up any interviews. I wanted the Most High to give me spiritual guidance and to connect the missing pieces of the puzzle. I met Rasamba on the streets and we connected instantly. Together with his wife Jalia and their 2 kids, Ivory and Chinowe, they took me into their home and their hearts.
Barbados is a very Eurocentric place. Barbados is a place that really was getting teaching the lawyers, constructive thing, how to control people there. You see, now Christianity, based on it real serious, especially this fuckery. Barbados is very Eurocentric, educated and still foolish about the culture.
Barbados was an island settled in the 1620s as part of the expansion of the British colonial empire in those days. And it very rapidly became one of the richest colonies in the British Empire, kind of jewel in the crown of the British Empire. And the reason for that was that Barbados became the major sugar producer within the British Empire. And so it generated fantastic profits for the planters who settled here. And of course, those profits were generated on the backs of black slave labor from Africa. During the 19th century, there is a shift in the international economy with the emergence of steamships from the 1840s onwards. So this means as slavery comes to an end, as emancipation happens, there is suddenly a vastly increased demand for seaborne labor to do things like shoveling coal into the furnaces and so forth. So there are thousands of jobs aboard ship doing labouring work, if you like, feeding the boilers to drive the steamships. Seafaring is an absolutely critical area of employment for black men in the 19th century. The reason is that it provides one of the very few means of escaping from rural plantation society.
Barbadians have been a seafaring people for as long as we can think of, from time immemorial. And once it was a British ship, you would find Barbadians working on them because the country offered very few and very limited areas for gainful occupation. So going on an English ship, going all around the world, going through Cape Horn, around the Cape of Good Hope, that was nothing unusual for Barbadians. And so therefore Joseph Orderson was following a very proud seafaring tradition. Now the fact that he got off in, let's say, Port Elizabeth or East London or Cape Town and decided to stay, that might raise some eyebrows, because the question is, how would he have survived apartheid then or slipped through the situation? But then he spoke English, so he would have been considered somebody from England, a black man from England. So Orderson would have exchanged a racially divided and racially segregated society of Barbados for a racially divided and segregated society of South Africa. It would not have been much of a difference. And what would have been the motivation for him in such a situation is greener pastures, the opportunity to work in some other area using skills, or being a seaman or working around the docks in Port Elizabeth, as distinct from going back to Barbados and cutting sugar cane for, as we say in Barbados, next kin to nothing. So Orderson's presence in Southwest Africa is not necessarily unique, and people would never have heard about Barbados, so he probably stopped talking about Barbados and just identified himself as a black Britisher.
And no cucumbers for you, cabbages. We got the cabbages local and organic. All right, you enjoy the weekend, sweetie. All right. Fireman! The struggle never stops, as you can see, you know, poor people right now. The poor people in Barbados getting to fight the vendors. Right now we here, we illegal. As Garvey didn't tell you, it's going to get dread in Barbados. It's going to get real dread, and them is the times they can start getting dread, you know. You know, things that exposed to the rest of the world. As they say, down here is the third world, so everything we get down here is the third world. Everything we get is third world. The seeds you plant, the food with is third world, they call them third world. The sprays you use, they call them third world. Everything is third world. We tired of the third world. And we is the first world. Creation master builders, you know? So from Barbados to South Africa, it's just love. And then I can't wait for the day of repatriation, you know? Because we tired of the West. We tired. Rasta know we tired of the West. We will go yard now. So it's just for the brothers and them as a unity, you know? Let love, loyalty dwell amongst Zion as it is in Zion, Africa. So it's Africa. Africa, come on Africa. Rastafari bless all the youths them, you know. Enough love to the ones them in South Africa is a strength and a blessing, you know, to have this day here. Not strength, brother. Selassie, King Rastafari is the Almighty, you know.
I met with some of the local elders to try and get a sense of their views of Africa.
Well, basically when I came along, I heard that we all from Africa. People, you know, that the first thing that we say that, man, we are all Africans and whatever. But West Indies, I don't know much about West Indies leaving going to Africa. Mostly West Indies that live Barbados and usually go to the West. Go to Cuba. London. I got the first they went to London. And the earliest stage of fight was say a lot of them went to Panama, Guyana, Cuba. You went here to work. And then they got the London transport, which would have been then when the wreck this you would man then. So I'm very serious here now. When you think about Africa, when you hear the word Africa, tell me what comes to your mind.
Okay, I think still eat people in Africa.
Maybe.
You don't know the people there.
Okay, we having a serious thing here, man.
What is I ask a reasonable question.
The question is not a reasonable question.
In Africa.
It's not a Cannibals is what cannibals. Well, you know, ask about England.
I asked him my interest in Africa. And when I get back
Cannibalism. No, we did not get back. He annoyed me.
Cannibalism
like that.
first started in Europe. Started in Europe?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I know about that. I hear it started in Africa.
Yeah, man, you hear what you want. You want to hear.
That's why I hear that you eat people in Africa. So I ask you a simple question. Did they still eat people in Africa?
So you wouldn't say you're African?
Huh?
You would say you're African?
No, I could never say African.
No, he's a war.
The average black Barbadian will tell you that he's not an African. He's a Barbadian. He fails to make the distinction between nationality and race. As you know, Barbadian is a nationality, just like Ugandan or Nigerian. So you have Nigerians and Ugandans, but they're still African. You have African Americans, they're American, but they're still African. So you have African Barbadians. So the African identity is not in conflict with the Barbadian identity. Barbados is one of the places where Africans came and developed their identity.
Barbados has no culture. You have to talk about African culture. Most of what we consider culture in Barbados will have to be either African from our slave colonial heritage or European from our masters. The average Barbadian does not hold to his African heritage.
Then you go to England and Liverpool and you meet an African man up there and you walk and go along. And as you walk around, but you tell you're not African.
You would tell you?
They will tell you that in London. They will tell you that you're not African.
But you can't listen to what people are saying.
No,
But ancestors came from there.
He is a foreign African. If my ancestors didn't come from Africa, I would got to know which tribe.
Normally, African is originated and not a nationality. This is the problem. That's why I told you it's an originated, but it's not a nationality. And my nationality is Barbadian.
Barbadian, right?
Okay, I'm talking about nationality.
Nationality.
But your African descent. But descent is
Who is African descent?
I
need African descent.
You know that.
The Barbadian African would be a different identity to the South African African or the Ethiopian African. But there would still be certain commonalities because they're still African.
We have, when we talk about culture, our culture, as I said before, goes as far, and most of the things that we do, apart from probably our clothing, which we take mostly from the Europeans, are basically African.
The other thing about Barbados, of course, is the particular shades of color. When the black people are in a majority white situation, like in the United States or in England, then you find that everybody is black. Once you're not white, you're black. But when you come into a situation now where the black people are in the majority, then the process begins of identifying all the different shades. So in Barbados, you have the red, which is the very light skin, then you have the brown, and then you have the black. So, and a term like red is a term that is used very loosely because it all depends on the emotional attitude. When the black people are in favor of you, they will say you're brown. A man like me, they will even give me the name, say you're a brown man. When they want to curse you, you're red. So a very elastic term that can mean many things. And in fact, any man that is darker than another, don't care how you may think a man might be dark, once a man is darker than him, it's not uncommon to hear him curse him and say, man, move your red ras from wrong here. And you might look at the man and say, but he's not red. Yeah, but he's not as dark as the man that cursing him. So, race carry many different angles,
Barbados is the first transshipment from Africa. Most of the slaves that scattered about through the West Indies and going back to North and South America, most of the generations passed through Barbados. And as I tell you, Louis Lynch was established here. This video used to break the slaves. Louis Lynch was a slave master that showed the people how to program the slaves to control them. Put the mothers to fight against the daughters, the fathers against the son. That even going on all over the world in the black diaspora where that is concerned. Because the most black people, you'll find all the races among in the world. Most divided people is black people. You always got conflict because people don't agree to disagree. No, they don't justify things. They always on a little petty ras, all power thing. And that caused a great problem amongst the poor and the black nation.
Infamous Willie Lynch is said to be a Barbadian planter who was invited to Virginia by the white planters in Virginia. And when he reached there, he found some slaves hung up on the trees, and he told them, man, you're wasting your time. This is your property. You can't kill them. The thing to do with them is to break them mentally. And Willie Lynch developed a whole strategy, a master plan for controlling and breaking a slave. He said, set the light skin against the dark skin. Set the men against the women, raise the girl children to be aggressive, raise the boy children to be docile, He created a whole manual for the mental destruction of the black race. And the most significant thing he said, once you set this force in motion, they will repeat it on themselves. They will continue the process. You won't have to do anything more. This is something that will be perpetuated by the slaves themselves and the descendants of the slaves themselves. And so it has been. And I always thought it was very significant that Willie Lynch came from Barbados, because Barbados truly was the place where the master plan for slavery was perfected.
South Africa is a particularly attractive place for people looking for economic opportunity at the end of the 19th century. There is the discovery of diamonds and gold, diamonds in 1867 at Kimberley, gold in the 1880s, and what that does is to transform South Africa suddenly into a huge magnet for labour and for capital. It becomes a centre of the international capitalist system because of that wealth in diamonds and gold, and it becomes a central focus for British imperialism as well. The result is that by the 1880s, 1890s, more and more ships are going to Cape Town, going to the South African ports, and taking with them waves of immigrants. Black seafarers who travel with those ships get off the ship and head for the gold fields. And the result of it is that by 1904, according to the census of the Cape, there were at least 400 West Indians living and settled in Cape Town.
Now, Barbadians did not know much about South Africa or the South African system of apartheid, but what they did know about was the movement of Marcus Garvey and his lieutenants in the USA to bring to black people a consciousness about their role in history, their present situation, and their destiny.
During the 1920s, the ANC goes through a process of radicalization, especially in the Cape, and especially driven by Garveyites. In this period, for example, the ANC adopts a new flag, which is based on the UNIA flag. During this period, the UNIA slogan, One God, One Aim, One Destiny, is adopted as the ANC slogan in Cape Town. And so you can see very directly there is a Garveyite influence on the ANC.
The experience of the African people mirrors that of our people in Haiti, in the other parts of the Caribbean, in Jamaica, in Barbados, etc. So the African Barbadian view of Africa is changing and changing for the better.
I made my way to the Department of Archives in Bridgetown, Barbados. I knew that I might find crucial information right here in this building. After a long search, I found proof of the birth of my great-grandfather, Joseph Nathaniel Orderson, born 1870. My journey now intensifies. I was excited by the prospects of meeting other Ordersons, families that could be my blood relatives. My research led me to Mr. Ali, who is a friend of an Orderson family.
Hi. Yeah, nice to meet you too. It's very important for you to be able to trace your family background, because in that way you get to understand and see a bigger picture of how you are today, where you came from, what probably were the customs then. I was on holiday about 3 weeks ago, and during that time I went to the archives to find out about my family's history, the family tree. Yeah. So after I'm an Aline, and my mother is an Aline, and my father is also an Aline. Okay. And the Alines that I know of arrived from St. Philip, the parish of St. Philip. Okay.
I heard about the Ordersons when I was a youngster. Last I heard some of the Ordersons had left there and gone up Kendall Hill or somewhere up there. But we got some old people that's still in this area that hasn't been anywhere, and they'll be able to probably, give you more enlightenment on the thing, because the Ordersons, they actually move out of the area.
But you ever heard of a plantation called Orderson?
There is a plantation in St. Philip near Orderson.
Yeah, right. That's been going to Bushy Park.
Right?
Which part?
And that is where I believe the name comes from, because all of our foreparents were named after the owners of plantations. After slavery, a lot of people then come up from the plantations and start to get their own houses and so. And there's where we find ourselves in districts. You find you in a district and find nearly everybody in that district is family.
we have some luck. Hi, good morning. Is this the Orderson residence? Hi.
Hi.
Good.
My name is
William. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hello. How are you doing?
Nice to meet you. What's your name?
William Orderson.
Where you from?
Rose Hill, Rastafarian, Christchurch.
Yeah, and what do you know about the family, the Orderson family?
Well, right now there isn't very much I can tell you. But I'd be very interested to find out how the family got the name. People ask me how I got the name. You know, I just tell them I born, went to school and everything with the name, but I really don't know how it got, how the family got the name or anything like that.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's so long, that's years.
The government archives.
Yeah.
I had to go there to collect something.
Okay.
For some reason I said, if I had time, I was inquire about the family name, and so I was like, the only thing surprising to me that when you called yesterday, I said, geez, umbrella will come across my mind.
No, it was because I thought maybe you have some information, you know.
No, I really don't know much.
Because I'm just calling all the Ordersons in the phone book, and just seeing, you know, if anyone has information, you know, about the Ordersons.
I don't really know much about them at all.
No, but thank you very much. I think it was very helpful, I think. I'll just continue, you know, looking for the other Ordersons. Hi. Is there anything you know about the Ordersons at the state in Barbados?
But you see, the news say that Ordersons are not originated from Barbados. Right.
Where did they go from?
I think my grand from Bahamas or something like that. Sure. But it's like all the Ordersons that live here, they're not much. All of us are related. So this is me.
Yeah.
On the other page is Double D.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's another one. But this is my sister. This is our house.
I think I've spoken to her.
This is my sister. This is our house. This one is our house. You smoking to this one. Let me say Anna. This is Anna. She's my cousin ex-wife. My mother niece.
Okay.
She got that name by marriage. This then is ex-wife? Oh yeah, this guy is from Africa. You saw him in the paper? Yeah, but I didn't know right, but that's okay. So I was just trying to get some information for this guy, but I didn't know. Right? He's from Africa. Sharian is, she's my cousin. She's my cousin's wife.
Yeah.
Well, I remember my uncle was saying that Ordersons didn't come from, like, we're not originally Bajans, because everybody's asked me where we get this name from. Right.
It was time to go home, and I had to say goodbye to the Ordersons. It wasn't important that they were not blood family, or that they did not know the history of their ancestry. We are all one family. We are Africans scattered all over the world. And what keeps us connected is the natural mystic which blows through the air. Back in Cape Town, the one person I had to see was my grandfather Dero. He has never been to Barbados, but I made that journey for him.
A story like this starts exposing that there's more to just seeing a person for the skin color. And I think then the significance of a story like this is to show this multi-layered hybrid identity in terms of diversity, a political consciousness, a migration, a history, a story that says that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we're all black.
Die was basically waar Tera se pa vandaan gekom het. Barbados. So friend Melanie, she was shooting for us. Yeah. I met some Ordersons there actually there in Barbados. You know,
part of the family today.
We're starting on a micro level where it's healing to me, it's healing to you, it's healing to a family, it's healing to Cape Flats, it's, you know, healing to South Africa. If we look at globally, the issue of the diaspora is taking shape. Different debates around what does it mean to be from a diaspora. Hence a story like this becomes significant for a whole different reason. And one can go on, but I think you want to focus on the issue of being able to unpack a multifaceted identity.
We do not have a picture of our great-grandfather Joseph Orderson, and though none of us really know what he looked like, we have proved his existence. He lives in our memories and in us.